Therefore, we express our gratitude and respect for the honor of living and working in this territory. Now we get to introduce you to our MC for this full day. He is a 7-time best-selling author and senior economic analyst. He became the go-to, unbiased commentator on BNN, CBC, CTV, and Global, as well as on radio and print media. In other words, he knows his stuff. Since officially retiring and stepping out of the limelight, he is focused on having a positive impact on communities across the Fraser Valley, as well as the rest of Canada through his charity, the A40 Foundation, including raising over $1.35 million for Habitat for Humanity. Well done. We pulled him kicking and screaming out of retirement to host today's event because we know he will bring his extra analysis and insights along with him. So please welcome to the stage the very recently retired. Unretired. Oh, see, that's the small font on here. Unretired, I was about 12 minutes ago. Abbotsford's own Don Campbell. Please welcome Don Campbell.
Thank you, Kevin. You read that exactly how I wrote it. Hey, everybody, how are you? It's early. Did you get coffee? Yeah. This is an economics conversation. Economics are boring. The event is not going to be boring. Okay, so we're going to do some stuff. We're going to have some fun. You're going to take notes. I suggest you grab one of these rather than have your cell phone. And if you're like me, you'll grab two because you're Scottish. And but there are some things we need to do. We need to do a little bit of homework. We need to do a little bit of insights. My job is to kind of keep this thing rolling along. So I will not... The power. It's amazing. Can I have the lights on, please? Summit is designed to, like a coming together of political leaders, small business, large business, university, etc., so that we come together to really set up the future for the Fraser Valley. The sad part is that right now there are some, what some people would say, dark clouds hanging over the economy. And the unfortunate thing is that was almost perfectly on cue. Dark clouds, sunshine. I like that. But the sad part is that many of us, many business owners and political leaders, get caught up in the darkness. And I've been through 3 economic dark cloud events. 4, I guess, now. And I'll tell you, the best thing you can do is let everybody else focus on the dark and find the light on the other side. Find the opportunity on the other side. And that's what we're going to attempt to do in one very, 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 very full day, as you'll see in your brochure. It's tight timelines, but there's going to be lots of time at lunches, etc., for us to hang out together. So it's a good day to decide in advance that you're going to look for some of the silver linings. Not be a Pollyanna and ignore the dark, but really look for the good stuff. Because we can shape the future of the Fraser Valley's economy, jobs, everything together if we put our heads together. The unfortunate thing, I'm going to quote the great philosopher Bono. There is no them, there's only us. And that's how we have to look ahead, look forward. We might not all agree, but it's still all of us. Let's stop fighting and let's start working together. Let's stop obfuscating, that's my longest word of the day, and really start focusing on where we can go. You have a program in front of you, as I showed you earlier. I've already lost it. And there are times in there, completely ignore them. Because the chances, by the way, we have politicians on the stage, so the chances of us sticking to this timeline is going to be very difficult. My job is to help it happen, but these are approximate times. Please don't come running to the back and say, you were going to be on 10:04, because that's not how it works. So, unfortunately, Councillor Silver couldn't, Representative Samath was delayed in transit today. It is unable to attend. So we get to jump right in to the most amazing bit, and that's the inevitable housekeeping. Okay, emergency exits are there, toilets are in the back. You guys are, I think we can all agree right now that we're adults, correct? Yes or no? Who is not an adult? Raise your hand. This is supposed to be pre-breakfast jaunt. It's going to be fun, honest to goodness. So there's bathrooms outside, not outside, but outside. Gentlemen, there's bathrooms outside in the trees there. Respect those around you, even if you have, and we've all been to enough of these, even if you have that brilliant thought that you must share with the people at your table, consider it not that brilliant. Wait until the break, because we want people to hear. Like when Ken's coming up here, he's analyzing and he's doing the thing and showing us the economic future of what's happening. Don't say there, oh, I saw that graph earlier today, or something. You're not that brilliant. You're brilliant, but the comment doesn't need to be shared at that moment. Just respect. And at the end of every break, you're going to hear this. Well played. Just as a reminder that we're going to get back on time, because this is a very full, very, very full day. If you need a hit of caffeine or you need to go to the bathroom, just do it. We're adults. If you have to get up, just go. The coffee is going to be in the back of the room. If you need that shot, please just do it. I want to acknowledge that our volunteers from the Chamber's Company of Young Professionals and Entrepreneurs program was working, checking us in, and there'll be a number of them will be here throughout the day. So let's give them a big thank you, everybody. And even importantly, if not as more importantly, is the young lady who's standing in the back, Natalie. Natalie, didn't know I was going to say this. She has worked so hard to make this thing come together for you. And I think that she deserves a huge congratulations and a round of applause. Thank you. And of course, Classic Catering for those. I don't know if there was enough bacon there, but oh man, that was good. Anyway, so thank you to Classic Catering, and they will also be providing the lunch. And all of the events today are going to be right here in this room. You're going to be in and out, so you can mark your table however you like to mark your table. what I didn't say, this is my 930th conference that I've been done this. Yeah, I started when I was 9, I think. But it's 930th, and it's the funniest thing. Different audiences, you run in to grab the back seat on economics ones. On other type, more fun ones, you run in and you grab the front seat. It's really bizarre. Yes, the perfunctory dignitary welcome. One of my favorite parts. So I'm going to we're blessed actually to have 2 different sets of dignitaries in this room. The first is the group who always seem to get acknowledged, the elected officials. So if you're an elected official or an international dignitary, which I know we have some in here, please stand up for a second, and I want to say something to you. Please stand up. Come on. You're elected officials. Stand up. Look at the hesitancy. Usually it's like, I'm right here. I think we all need to thank you for coming here and listening to what's really going on in the economy at all different levels. So let's give them a round of applause. Thank you for coming out. The second set of dignitaries is, some would argue, is as important, if not more important, to the future of the Fraser Valley. And that group of dignitaries is comprised of business owners, entrepreneurs, and employees of the region's businesses and farms. Because without them, we're not going to have the economic boom. We're not going to have job growth. We're not going to have the positive, I'm just going to put everything into it approach. So they deserve a special round of applause too. The dignitaries who are here on their own accord and have taken a day off of their businesses, et cetera, to learn what's going on so that they can be catalysts for the future of the economic growth of the Fraser Valley. So let's give them a round of applause too. Yourself. Oh, look at that. We're already 2 minutes ahead. I'd like to, our hosts today, I'm just the MC, came out of retirement. I'm going to try and remember the English language. I've been talking a lot to cows recently. I'd like to welcome to the stage the group who has put this important event together, the members of the Fraser Valley Business Coalition. Collectively, they represent thousands of businesses across Abbotsford, Langley, Chilliwack, and Mission, and chairing the coalition this year is Alex Mitchell, the CEO of the Abbotsford Chamber of Commerce. So let's welcome our hosts, please.
Okay, you have all four of us on stage because this is truly all about collaboration. So to start things off, thank you. Thank you for being here. Today is a really, really exciting day. I love seeing faces from folks all across the region and the different communities that our individual chambers are representing. So thank you for being here. Today is going to be exciting, it's going to be interesting, and maybe a little challenging. With that, I have a couple of remarks that I'd like to make, and then I'll introduce the rest of our coalition. So, the Fraser Valley is a powerhouse economic region with enormous untapped potential. Our coalition collectively represents thousands of businesses, but we know that we cannot seize this region's economic opportunity without strong partnerships. This summit is here to ignite the momentum that is happening across our growing communities to ensure that all eyes are on the Fraser Valley. The priorities for the Valley are clear, from key investments in trade-enabling infrastructure to an increase in skilled training opportunities for our workforce. It's time to deliver a bold economic vision for the future of our region. With that, I'll pass it over to Leanna.
Thanks, Alex. I'm coming to you from the Chilkoot territory, which is part of the Stalo Nation as well. And I do want to just acknowledge and thank the Samath people for allowing us to host and be on these lands today. So thank you so much. I've got to find my notes here. For those of you that don't know me, I am Leanna Kemp. I am the Executive Director of the Chilliwack Chamber of Commerce. And the creation of the Fraser Valley Business Coalition is crucial, as the Fraser Valley is expected to see a 47% population growth by 2050, making critical investment necessary. While the coalition's primary focus is advocacy, we're very focused on solutions-focused, real change conversations. Today, we will address a number of priorities, such as efficient funding for our universities, opening more seats for key industries to support local growth, modernizing the ALR, alongside investments in crime prevention, public safety, and transit and infrastructure. Together, we aim to ensure that the Fraser Valley is well equipped to handle future growth and continue to thrive. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. I am Miriam Bosman from the Mission Regional Chamber of Commerce, which is located in the Stalo territory of the River People. This coalition represents a pivotal moment for the Fraser Valley, one that Mission Chamber is proud and very grateful to be a part of. We look forward to uniting the diverse voices of our local businesses to speak with one strong voice on issues that matter. We're not just creating a coalition, we're laying the groundwork for a more vibrant and resilient local economy by addressing the unique challenges that face our region with an amplified voice together. Thank you very much.
Good morning. If you have not had what I've been told is the distinct pleasure of meeting me yet, my name is Corey Redderkopf. I am the CEO of the Greater Langley Chamber of Commerce. Thrilled to be here with my chamber colleagues. I think business is a lesson for all of us. I mean, we can get so much more done when you collaborate and work together, and I think we're here and from Langley are thrilled to be part of this coalition, to be bringing thought leaders, decision makers, business leaders together to talk about what our region needs and how we can do more and push forward faster together. In my eyes, and I think in many people in this room, I'm hoping it's clear the Valley is the future. This is where economic activity is going to be. This is where population growth will be going forward. And as such, this region deserves, and the communities within it, the investment and support that it needs to be successful. The Langley Chamber is thrilled to be part of this coalition and to ensure that the voice of our four communities and this region is heard and isn't kept waiting for critical transportation, housing, healthcare infrastructure that our people and businesses need today to be successful. If you're in business, if you're looking at where the future is, where prosperity is going to be coming from, where the action's going to be. It is going to be here. I'm thrilled that you're all joining us this morning to be part of that. And thanks for being here for the day, and I'm sure it'll be a great one. Thank you.
So there you have it. We are the members of the Fraser Valley Business Coalition, and again, want to thank every one of you for being here today. We are going to dive in. Now, before we head into some of the programming, we want to recognize a few other key people that are in the room. One of them is from the University of the Fraser Valley, which is where we are today. And so you might have all been wondering, why are we here at UFV? Why are we at a campus? And it really is because the University of the Fraser Valley is a regional economic generator for all of our communities, training the next generation of talent that are going to work for your companies, that are going to work for the organizations that are driving our economy forward. And so it's that partnership, and it's through that level of appreciation of what UFV does in our region that we are thrilled to be here today. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest speaker who's going to welcome us to this space. Joanne McLean. Dr. Joanne McLean is the President and Vice Chancellor here at the University of the Fraser Valley, has been an amazing partner to the Coalition, and we're so pleased to have you here today. Come on on.
Well, thank you, Alex, and good morning, everyone. It is absolutely a pleasure to be here. Don, you got it wrong. I gotta say, economic conferences, these are like fun. These are at the top of the list. You don't have to worry about that. It's totally my pleasure to welcome you today to the inaugural Fraser Valley Economic Summit, and especially to welcome you to the University of the Fraser Valley's Abbotsford campus. We're very glad that you're here. I too want to begin by acknowledging that our university campuses are situated on the traditional territory of the Halkomelem-speaking Stalo people, the people of the river, and we recognize with pride the Indigenous peoples of this land and accept our responsibility for helping to steward this beautiful territory, the lands in which we live and work and play. And of course, acknowledging territory is a tradition that dates back thousands of years for First Nations people, but today we do this to acknowledge Indigenous territory. We do it as an act of respect, one of recognition and one of reconciliation. So, sorry. Put that anywhere, Joanne. Whoops. Breaking things here. I am delighted that UFV can serve as the gathering place for this economic summit. It's truly wonderful to have so many leaders here this morning, so many influencers, so many innovators coming together to discuss the economic potential of the Fraser Valley and the opportunities and challenges we face in the pursuit of this potential. The recently created Fraser Valley Business Coalition creates a unified, a collaborative approach to discussing critical issues. I think that is truly important. We are elevating economic discourse. We're advocating for sustainable growth and development. And there is one thing that I'm sure of, and it's already been alluded to a few times. When we face challenges that demand our collective attention, we are stronger together. We are better together. And that's what we do today. We are here to do the hard work to build towards a more sustainable future tomorrow, and we will be enabled through this power of partnership. Great communities flourish through collaboration and long-term planning as the road to progress through innovation and openness to ideas is the most sustainable, the most appropriate approach. And I thank the Fraser Valley Business Coalition for bringing people together, bringing us together today to have those rich and robust and educational conversations about our regional economy and how we manage complexity and change going forward. From infrastructure imperatives to the burgeoning opportunities in agriculture and agri-tech, and the nurturing of our future workforce, the breadth of topics under discussion today underscore the importance of this work in building a better future. So thank you all for attending and allowing UFV to play a part. I look forward to the conversations today.
All right, so I've been called out once already. Okay, I'm wrong once. Get ready for lots more of those. So the reality is that this will be fun. This will be interesting, and as Alex alluded to, it will also be challenging. So what we're trying to do here is open some doors that may have been closed over the last few years of political rhetoric, etc. So the coming together is so important to this whole thing. We've got tourism in the room, we've got farming and agriculture in the room, we have UFV in the room, we have small business, we have construction, we have rental housing providers, we have everything in this room. And if we all put our minds together, we can do that. Now, we can't run these events without a strong sponsor, and the Abbotsford Tech District is the platinum lead sponsor of the event. And speaking of business leaders, this is irritating. Speaking of business leaders who are trying to provide housing, jobs, economic development, agriculture innovation for our region, let me introduce our platinum lead sponsor. Gavin Dew is a Chief Strategy Officer for Abbotsford Tech District, one of the largest private sector investments Abbotsford has seen in generations. I think it's called a potential investment right now. Gavin has worked at the intersection of business and public policy, not the intersection of Montrose and South Fraser Way, and technology for almost 20 years, helping unlock billions of private dollars of investment and thousands of jobs supporting people and families across Canada. So we asked him to say a few words about the relationship between business, government, and community. So please welcome from the Abbotsford Tech District, Mr. Gavin Dew. Shall I shake your hand, sir? They're all yours. They don't like really cheesy jokes, by the way. Yeah.
Oh, then I guess I'm done if you don't like cheesy jokes. Thank you, Don. Those of you who know me know I never met a Mike I didn't like. I had a joke about Mike DeYoung, but he's not here yet. Now, since we helped to pay for this particular mic, they gave me a few minutes to preach the gospel of Get to Yes to a semi-hostage audience. Now, today's event is a testament to the collaborative spirit that fuels our growth, our prosperity, and our vibrancy as a region. In that spirit, it's great to be here today on both the traditional territory of the Hul'qumi'num-speaking people of the Hul'qumi'num-speaking Stolo peoples, slow down, Gavin, and the home turf of the University of the Fraser Valley. Working with UFE is a cornerstone of our plan for a multi-decade, multi-billion-dollar private sector investment that will bring not just affordable housing and well-paying jobs for people and families, but also post-secondary excellence that supports innovation and growth, starting with our bedrock agricultural sector. Abbotsford Tech District will help farmers and producers in the Fraser Valley and beyond to support their families while putting food on the table for all of ours, whether it's dairies or berries, chicken or eggs, or even salmon and tilapia. We are proud to work closely with UFE and proud to put private sector funding and energy to work to elevate this university to the position that it deserves and that you all deserve as communities it serves. Now, I'd like to help set the frame for the day by touching on the crucial relationship between business, government, and the community, which is what brings us all together today. At the heart of any thriving economy lies the principle of free enterprise, the belief that individuals and businesses, free from undue regulation, can drive innovation, create jobs, and generate wealth. Businesses are engines of innovation and growth. They play a vital role in our society. They create jobs, provide services, and contribute to the tax base that funds the public services we all rely upon. And they make voluntary contributions of time, talent, and treasure to support good causes in the community. But they can only do those things when they're operating successfully. When businesses do well, society does well. When we as business people look to policymakers for solutions, both we and they must remember that there is no such thing as government money. There is only taxpayer money, which is generated and often collected through businesses like those represented in the room, all of you. Without a private sector to pay the bills, government can't do much. So to our elected officials, remember this: businesses are like a herd of milk cows. If you milk them too hard, with taxes and regulations and uncertainty, they will simply move to greener pastures. Come on, that's a cheesy joke, Don. One of the last events we did here started out as a competition for the cheesiest dad jokes involving food and farms, and it went pretty far off the rails.
By the sound of that, you won it.
Don, I cut out all my best material. You told me to be serious. Now, with that said, business needs government. We need the foundation it provides, setting the rules, ensuring fair competition, and protecting the public interest. We need smart regulation and sound fiscal policy to till the fields so business can grow. We need investments in hospitals and universities, highways and flood protection. No, seriously, we really, really need those investments. So I hope the aspiring politicians here today take that message back to the folks writing their election platforms and let them know in big, bold, shiny letters, it's time for the Fraser Valley to get its fair share.
Nice.
Now, don't worry, folks. They'll all soon be driving around dumping money out the back of a truck with promises of more to come. It is an election year, after all. But let's be clear on the message of the day. It will take more than government spending alone for the Fraser Valley to thrive. It will also take leadership and decision-making and shared vision. A multi-billion-dollar project like Abbotsford Tech District requires land, capital, partnerships, community buy-in. It requires a plan. But without decisiveness from government, we can do nothing. And in the long run, if we can do nothing, then we can give nothing. The same goes for any other business looking to invest in any other community in our region, our province, our country. We are at a fork in the road where Canada can choose to be a nation of naysayers or a nation of problem solvers and builders and doers. So to our elected officials and those seeking to join them, I say now is the time to actually lead, to resist the siren song of the culture war, to cast off the shackles of humility and timidity and indecision, to be loud and proud, and to lay out a constructive and forward-looking vision of a region that is prosperous, innovative, and assertive. And if you lead, you are in a room full of people who will support and follow and cheer you on. So let's go.
One dad joke. Oh. Anyway, Gavin, thank you very much. It's a really important message for all of us to hear. Now, on behalf of the coalition, I'd also like to thank all of the sponsors, and it's a long list, so thank you very much, because these things don't happen without sponsors. So let me just go through the list, shall I? Abbotsford Tech District, Enbridge, Envision Financial, the A440 Foundation, Fortis, Vancouver Fraser Port Authority, BC Centre for Agriculture Innovation, Black Press, Community Future, South Fraser, North Fraser, Stolo, Abbotsford Business Community Coalition. I was trying to do it in one breath, didn't work. MS Productions, University of the Fraser Valley, and the Fraser Valley Indo-Canadian Business Association. Without all that support, we could not hold an event of this quality and get these super cool lights in the back. Isn't that pretty nice? So thank you very much. Now, on to today's program. Please take a look at your conference booklet if you'd like. You'll see the agenda. We're starting off this morning with our keynote address by Ken Peacock of the Business Council on the state of the Fraser Valley economy. An overview of the economic reality. Might be painful, might be sunshine, there might be hidden little gems in there for you. It's an overview of the reality. In total, you're going to hear today from over 30 different people. Some opinions shall differ. But we're going to start off with the facts and the figures. So to introduce Ken, I'd like to call up Dan Teye from the sponsor, the keynote sponsor, Envision Financial. Dan, there he is. Come on up. Give it up for Envision, everybody. Thank you. How'd I do with the name?
Good.
Teye?
Stuck the landing. That's impressive. Jeez, we're not paying him enough.
Watch out for the dad jokes.
Oh, fine, I'll cut it out. Envision Financial is proud to be the keynote sponsor for the inaugural Fraser Valley Summit. My name is Dan Teye. Like I said, he nailed it. And I lead our Fraser Valley commercial team, which covers the Abbotsford, Chilliwack, Mission, and Hope markets. Our membership includes a diverse range of businesses, including contractors, retailers, farmers, service companies, builders, and developers. As we continue to grow, our collective size, strength, and local expertise enables us to create greater value for our members and the communities in which we work and live. Local business is essential to the economic health of our communities, and the advocacy work done by our chambers of commerce is so important. It is exciting to see the cooperation from these 4 chambers amplify the voice of local business to ensure they are heard. We are thrilled to be part of today's event. Joining us to provide an overview of the economic outlook for the Fraser Valley is Ken Peacock, Senior Vice President and Chief Economist of the BC Business Council. The Council represents 220 large and medium-sized businesses that account for approximately a quarter of the jobs in the province. Mr. Peacock contributes to the Council's work on economic and policy issues of interest to the business community. And prior to the Business Council of BC, Mr. Peacock was an economist with Central Run Credit Union, and there he advised credit unions on the outlook for the provincial economy, housing markets, interest and exchange rates. Please welcome to the stage Ken Peacock.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you to Alex and the organizers. I am a fan of the Fraser Valley, and I have been for a long time, particularly some of the rapidly growing sectors like agriculture and the tech space. I do have to say, I think Don may have made a slight error in judgment. He suggested that the timelines were not too tight to an economist who has too many graphs. That's not a wise play for the first speaker of the morning, but I will endeavor to stick to my timeline. I do have a lot of material and a lot of slides. I'm just going to say this one thing. I scrambled to print these out because I was so negligent in getting my presentation to Alex in a timely manner. She wanted to make copies, so I scrambled last night and went to my office and printed them out. And I'm pretty sure that half your slides are missing. I only photocopied on one side, not 2 sides. So there's good news and bad news to that. The good news is there are some slides that will still be a surprise, so that's good for me. But I will have to send you a PDF copy to make sure that you do get a copy of every slide. So I did my best, but fell shy. I should not tangle with that technology of photocopiers. So I guess the other thing is actually, I'm going to back up just to my slide thing there and just say it's a thin title, but what's next refers mostly to what comes after the big, large energy infrastructure projects that we have been building for the past 6 or 7 or 8 years here in BC. This is very much a theme of my presentation. I will be going back to that a lot, and I will also be doing that so we can understand kind of what happened over the past 4 or 5 years and what might lie ahead. It's not the most optimistic economic update presentation I've ever cobbled together. There are some challenges and there are some dark clouds on the horizon. However, I will endeavor to deliver it in an upbeat manner to kind of offset the less than optimistic outlook that we're facing. Certainly, and I'm not going to spend much time on the external backdrop, but I will say it's a weak economic global backdrop, and for people who are looking for interest rates to be cut, right out of the gate, I'll say it's a little soon, later in the year, but it's going to be a challenge for the Bank of Canada to move on the interest rate front anytime soon. Construction, as I mentioned, those huge energy projects provided a huge lift. That, of course, boosted BC's top-line GDP growth number, and I'll talk about GDP in probably too much detail for people here this morning, but if we look at the per capita number per person growth, which drives prosperity and well-being, at the end of the day, the picture is much different. And on the labor market front, there is something going on in British Columbia. I have a fair amount of slides and information on the labor market. I remain puzzled. We stand out unique on our own in BC, and that will become evident as I go through my slides. Growth drivers, you will see there. The first bullet under growth driver, I have government spending and capital. This is the first time in 23 years I've ever listed government as a growth driver. Sometimes we talk about fiscal expansion, lifting and boosting growth, but literally government is front and center as the economic engine, or one of the big economic engines in terms of driving expansion. This is a concern for us, of course, and for the long-term stability and prosperity of the province. Parts of the export base, for sure. Mining, LNG production comes online this year. That will provide a big lift to exports, but all the winding down of the construction is a bigger loss. Tourism is recovered and probably will do well this year. Film and TV. Also, I would put agriculture, agricultural exports in that list as well, just because I've been watching BC's agricultural exports very closely since about 2010, maybe a little bit more, and it is the fastest growing sector in line with film and TV and education exports. So it has done very well for quite some time. Technology's on the list, agri-tech I would put on the list, professional services, linked to computers and similar activities also being a very, very strong growth area. Challenges there on the bottom, uncertainty, some of the comments Gavin was making entirely appropriate from my perspective. We do need less government, more private sector investment, more capital investment. Just briefly on the global outlook, I would note that the global outlook this year and into next year is the weakest since the 80s, probably in 4 decades. So the high-level backdrop is causing challenges and weighing on both Canada's and BC's economic prospects. The U.S. held up better than many expected in 2024, but is expected to slow down next year. The euro area, very, very soft this year, picking up next year. Japan has been languishing with slow and weak growth for several decades now. We still export a lot to Japan, but its economy never really grows in a manner that provides a huge lift, sustained lift for BC's exports to Japan. China slowing. I don't know if people are watching China, but it has a fair amount of challenges, to say the least, and it is now in a world of much more normal growth, 4.5% growth compared to the heady days of 8 and 9% for China. And then Canada, of course, slow growth this year, expected to rebound next year. With respect to inflation, everybody's feeling the pain of inflation. Here I have just a picture of top-line inflation, the all items, and then the excluding energy and food metric. You can see the spike up just after COVID, all the fiscal spending, supply chain challenges and whatnot. We experienced a big surge in consumer prices. They have come back down, but they remain at the top of the Bank of Canada's inflation target zone, which is right around 3%. That's both headline inflation and the all items, and the excluding food and energy things. So it's heading in the right direction, but kind of stubborn around that 3% range. And with certainty, almost for sure, the Bank of Canada is going to be very reluctant to move too soon. They are going to want to make certain that inflation is in control, back down well into that 3% range, and that we don't have some, say even a small supply shock come along and send consumer prices rising back up. So I've been asked many times, at the beginning of the year, I was saying not in the spring for rate cuts, perhaps September, October. The recent strong jobs report, it may even be later in the year. And I think there's even a question mark whether it will materialize at all this year, a rate cut. So something to keep in mind. Population is the other background feature that has been transformative to the Canadian and BC economic and demographic landscape, and it comes from huge levels of immigration. I'm not going to belabor this graph too much because it's fairly self-evident, but we have had a massive, massive spike in the number of permanent immigrants, but the lift has been driven even more so by temporary immigrants. So those are students, temporary foreign workers, and a handful of other people here on a temporary basis. So this is a legitimate question and a theme that runs right through my talk. What is going to fill the gap? I've spent a lot of time looking in great detail at the economic accounts, unpacking the different segments and sectors, and I've come up with these estimates that I think are pretty accurate as to the kind of additional growth that the large projects, and when I say large projects, I'm talking Site C, I'm talking the Coastal GasLink, LNG Canada, and the twinning of the Trans Mountain Pipeline. So 4 big energy projects, massive, massive mega energy projects, provided that lift. It is now, most of them have now been fully complete, and we're not getting the same lift that we once did. And just to be clear, in 2020 there, we would have shrunk by 4%. That's what that little blue tip on the bottom is, but we only shrunk by 3% because of the big lift from projects during the COVID year. Wrapping that up and trying to present it in a framework that shows us versus the rest of the country, you can see there the estimates. BC, in terms of average economic growth, real GDP growth over that 5-year period, we did outperform Canada. And then when you add the projects on top, we really had a reasonably sizable gap on top of Canada in terms of with respect to our economic growth performance. Some of that 2% versus 1.5% average growth is because BC also had comparatively strong population growth. So if I start to unpack this a little bit more and talk about per capita GDP and per capita income, and perhaps I'll take a sip of water and just pause here because I have to say a bit of a mea culpa. For years, I've been up here talking GDP, and as an economist, I know GDP is equal to income, but I don't think I've done a good job to communicating that to my audiences. So when an economist says gross domestic product, that's talking about the value of all goods and services, the final value of all goods and services in the economy sold. That's what most people think about. But there's another way to count GDP, and that's on the income side of the equation. So you can add up all the wages and salaries and profits of businesses and some other investment numbers and some taxes, and you come up with the same number. So GDP is just income. And 2/3 of all GDP is wages and salaries and benefits flowing to households, plus some investment income. So when you hear people say, we don't really need to grow GDP per capita, they are saying, we have enough money, our wages are good, and we don't really need, on average, to grow the wages. So that's why economists care about GDP, and in particular, that's why economists care about GDP in per capita terms. So this is what's happened to our GDP. The COVID recession evident, and per capita, this is actually a fairly sizable increase, and I say that because, and I'm just going to take a moment here to provide some additional context. There's BC's GDP per capita, around 55,000. Canada's above. We have been below Canada since 1995. There's been a sizable gap. Our level of prosperity has been below the national level, but over the last 10 years, we have closed that gap. That is because of the large projects, mostly. The other factor is, if you look at 2014 and 2015, per capita GDP in Canada flatlined. So that gave BC an opportunity to close the gap, and if you look closely at that graph, you can see BC closing the gap over that 2 or 3 year period. That was when Alberta really suffered, energy prices tanked, and the Alberta economy actually shrank by 5% thereabouts for 2 consecutive years. That allowed BC to close the gap, and then the major projects came in behind, and in 2021, 2022, and 2023, BC equalized with Canada in terms of this metric of prosperity, GDP per capita, however you want to think about it. That is, if I take my estimate of what GDP would have looked like without the projects and do the per capita measure, that's what it would have been like, and that kind of looks more like history. That picture makes more sense. So it's, you know, it's very clear that those projects are the reason that we have caught up. And then if we think a little bit ahead, it's going to be the reason that we're going to fall behind again, because we don't have anything coming to fill that gap. And that is a forecast of BC's GDP per capita coming out of the back of the provincial budget, also mixed in with some of BC's. We're a little bit more optimistic on the economic outlook by a couple of percentage points than what is contained in the provincial budget. Just a bit on exports, and I just really want to note a couple things. For many, many years, we've tried to diversify our export base in BC. The reality is BC has a diversified export base, at least vis-a-vis the rest of the country, and the US continues to loom large, and if anything, the last 3 or 4 years have reinforced the fact that the U.S. is looming large in our export mix. We got down to a world when China was growing where we were only selling about 42% of everything we exported to the U.S. It's back up above 50%. And just switching to the other panel there, forestry and building products continue to loom large, but as you can see, they are trending down, and the whole forest products sector is under pressure in BC. But energy products on the right panel, that was a huge spike that provided a massive economic lift to BC around 2023. Energy is going to continue to feature very, very prominently, top of BC's exports, and generate a lot of export revenue for the province. Just going to flash this up to reinforce the point about the U.S. The blue line there, these are indexed figures, so we're tracking growth since 2010. The blue line last couple years really did pull our export sector up. And then the green line is India. I'm not usually in the habit of having lines run right up off the top of my graph, but in this case, if I showed India, the other lines would all be crunched on the bottom because its growth since 2010 in exports is in the thousands of percent. It started from a very small base, but India is following the same trajectory for BC's exports that China did starting in about 2002. So India is going to be a very, very significant growth sector. It's already evident, and I would put a lot of money on India continuing to grow and purchase more exports from British Columbia. How am I doing on time? Keep going. I'm going to keep rolling. I don't want to use that little bit of freedom you hinted at in the beginning. I'm going to shift to labor market, and this is where the comparative metrics with the rest of Canada get amped up. I'm going to lean on that because part of the reason is it's difficult to understand. You know, we've got COVID, we've got large projects, we've got inflation, and so it's difficult to understand what's going on in BC without providing some context and some situating of the province. What is immediately evident from this graph is 14, 15, 16, BC had stronger growth than Canada for several years. Then it started to slow. We got to 2019, we matched, and now job growth is stronger in the rest of Canada, the 9 provinces aggregated. I went to the trouble of subtracting BC out for all these calculations. So in 2022, 2023, that was the job growth for private sector employees. So these are people on payrolls in the private sector. 4.5%, 3.5%. 4% employment growth is large. That's like boom times. So every other province in the country experienced a boom in private sector hiring. That was what happened to BC in 2023. I've been watching the private sector hiring story for quite some time, waiting for things to turn around, and it just isn't coming, and 2023 was an especially bad year in terms of jobs in the private sector. I was just hinting at the fact it's been going on for quite some time. If I index or chart the growth in the number of private sector employees in this province since the outset of 2019, that's what it looks like. That's a rather flat line. We got a little bit of a bump in 2024, at the end of 2023, then it waned, and then we got a little bit more of an increase recently. But in effect, over that period, that's basically no job growth. That is public sector hiring. That is how many new employees we have in the public sector. This is the broad public sector: healthcare, education, public admin, federal, provincial, municipal. So it's all employees, but that is a 35 to 36% increase over that period. And just to be complete, I penciled in the number of self-employed. It's not the case that people are leaving the private sector employed positions to go become self-employed. That category of workers has also been flat since 2019. Rest of Canada, it is not the case that the rest of Canada has had robust private sector job growth over the entire period. Yes, in 2023, but not over the entire period. But nevertheless, much stronger than we've seen here in British Columbia, much, much stronger. I'm just going to make, if I can remember my statistic, I did this for an article I wrote. Essentially, the situation in BC is for every private sector job that has been created since 2019. We've had 5.5 public sector jobs. Not the case in the rest of Canada. The number of private sector jobs created in the rest of Canada, I'm not going to quote the numbers because I can't remember them, but we've got more private sector jobs in aggregate than public sector jobs elsewhere in Canada. So the situation is not quite as reversed in the rest of Canada as it is here in BC. Building permits, this is in line with the whole notion that the expansion of government. And I'm just going to start with the non-residential building permit category, and that's your left panel, the Metro Vancouver numbers. You can see the dark bars there are institutional and government projects, mostly hospitals and schools. Huge lift surge in 2022, almost equal with commercial. This is unbelievable. Never is the value of commercial building permits almost equal to the institutional and government number. Jump over to the other panel. If I X out Metro Vancouver and look at the rest of BC, and I did try and get just the Fraser Valley, but didn't have time, so the Fraser Valley will be a big piece of that, excluding Metro Vancouver graph over there. And note in 2023, more government permits than commercial building permits. Trend lines overall, apart from government, kind of flat, not a lot of building growth with respect to non-residential permits in 2024 and maybe 2025 as well. Housing starts, the main thing here is just the huge numbers of multiple compared to singles, particularly in Metro, but you have seen a shift in the rest of BC too, from single dwellings being kind of even with multiple dwelling construction, and now it's the case that multiple dwellings are much larger. But again, in 2023, outside of Metro Vancouver, permits for both singles and multiples did slip. Record high migration, 10. I'm right on schedule. You guys okay? Okay. I had to check. There's a bit more to come. Record high in migration. We saw it at the national level. BC grew more quickly than most other provinces. You can see the orange bar there is permanent immigration. The green bar is that non-permanent category I was talking about. And the black line is the top. And if you look closely, the two little blue bars on the bottom there are interprovincial migration, which recently turned negative. If I look just at the movements between BC and Alberta, in the last year and a half, there has been a huge surge to people moving to Alberta. Just an incredible pickup. It's a record in terms of numbers, and the dark blue line dot at the end of the series there is a little bit higher than the one in 98. And it's not quite a record in terms of the net outflow, but the number of people moving, and we are very close to a record in terms of the net outflow to Alberta. I watch this metric closely because to me it's a bellwether. It's a lagging indicator, but it's clearly a bellwether, and if we look at the total number of net out migration over this longer period of time, it's very much the case that BC usually has more people moving into it. Of course, when you go back to the 70s, that makes sense. Everyone from the east was moving west. But there's been a couple periods where we have had net out migration. The biggest was in the second half of the 90s, and we now are again seeing significant net out migration to other provinces. Jobs and housing prices. Three slides, I believe, on the government's fiscal situation. Our fiscal predicament is deteriorating. What I have here are the surpluses and deficits of the provincial government going back to 2010. You can see 2000 and 2021, the COVID year, ran a large deficit equivalent to 1.8% of GDP. Then we had a couple surpluses, and then deficit in 2020. We had the surpluses because of a huge revenue windfall, massive upside surprise because of the high energy prices and whatnot. But this year, the government is going to run a deficit equal to 1.9% of GDP, $8 billion. This is where I do have to scratch my head a little bit and say, why are we running a deficit equal to 1.9% of GDP when we only ran one equal to 1.8% of GDP when the economy was shut down entirely? It seems a bit perplexing. Inflation is running amok. The central bank is asking, Tiff Macklem, the governor, is basically, in banker language, in central banker language, pleading with governments to quit providing so much fiscal stimulus and work with the bank and trying to rein in inflation rather than work against them. You can see the plan is for three successive large budgets in and around 1.9, 1.8% of GDP. That is a lot of spending. Turns out, BC is leading in this category. That's the federal government, and that's BC. And when you outspend the federal government, this federal government, that's an accomplishment. You got to work hard to do that. Is really. And then every other province coming more in line, fairly sizable deficit in Quebec, but BC stands alone in the federation on this metric. What does it mean for debt? Well, budgets, you have the spending side, the operating side, and then you have the capital side, the capital investment side. Capital goes to debt. The plan is basically to double BC's debt via an increase in operating spending, running deficits, and a huge increase in capital spending. This is massive, massive, massive. There is a little bit of upside here, okay, and this is my optimistic beat in the presentation. There's almost with certainty the government will not be able to deliver on its planned capital projects. They've never managed to invest more than $6 billion, get it built and constructed. So what I've done here is the whole line is what was planned in the budget. The dark blue line is what they managed to get built, spend, invest that year. And then the line below is the percentage difference between what was planned and what was realized. And clearly, with the passage of time since about 2016, more projects have not been getting completed and they're getting pushed back. So one of the reasons we have record level capital investment is because projects are being rolled back in successive years. And over the past 3 or 4 years, that adds up in total to about $8 billion. Vaughn Palmer was onto this in the budget lockup and asked about the number of new projects in the current budget and noted that there was only one new school renovation or a new school. And that is because, even though there was a huge increase in spending, and that is because the increase in spending is a result of mostly just rolling projects forward and not significantly increasing what is planned from 4 or 5 years ago. This all leads to the bond rating agencies noting the deterioration in BC's fiscal situation, and we have been downgraded. S&P downgraded us for the second time. We were AAA in July 2021. We're now AA minus. I will leave you to read the comments that accompanied that statement when S&P downgraded us, but the one that jumps out at me, BC's budgetary performance will be the weakest of its peers, both domestically and internationally. These rating agencies don't throw words like that around lightly. They're watched around the globe, and so when they write those words, we should be paying attention here in BC. Moody's maintained its rating, but they did change the outlook to negative. And they did note that the rating could be downgraded. It should be if the province is unable to meaningfully improve its fiscal trajectory over time. So this means higher borrowing costs. We're already in a situation where interest chews up as much as social service programs. I think it's 4 cents on the dollar, rising to 5 cents on the dollar fairly shortly. I do have a few comments on Fraser Valley, not as much as I'd hoped, given the picture that I was trying to present earlier. But I said earlier, I'm a Fraser Valley fan. You have the land, you have the people, you have the entrepreneurial spirit, and you have the industries. And BC in general is well located, notwithstanding some of the material I just presented. But we are well positioned to continue to grow well. I think these population numbers reflect that kind of long-term, comparatively strong growth outlook, opportunity. I do believe they're embedded in those numbers. 8th fastest city of Langley, Langley District, Fraser Valley basically growing above the BC speed, Chilliwack just below. But if you do look at the other panel or the other column, the 5-year period, 2013 to 2017, some of the growth rates in that column are also very impressive. So I do think you're going to continue to see stronger, above average population growth, some of the strongest in the region for some of the reasons I mentioned. This I did just to look at the world from a Fraser Valley perspective. Usually it's always the other way. Everybody benchmarks to British Columbia or Canada or something. But what I've done here is just in keeping with that theme of comparative strength and comparative economic growth and prosperity in the Fraser Valley, my sense and belief is the rise in property prices over the past decade reflects that, because what this is saying is the Fraser Valley is the region that everyone else is compared to, so it's always 100. And when you're above the line, that's when prices are higher, and when you're below the line, that's when prices are lower. And to me, what is very, very striking is the gap that was closed between the Fraser Valley home prices and Metro Van home prices from 2016 to 2022. Basically, almost became equal. Now, there's been some divergence recently, but that really does speak to more rapid price appreciation in general in the valley over that period. Also, I just have to draw attention to the bottom line, Calgary. At one point, Calgary prices in 2015 were even with the average price in Fraser Valley, but now Calgary prices are about 65%, 67% of what they are in the Fraser Valley. Of course, it's going to be even less compared to Metro. Another reason why the outflow to Alberta has accelerated and become so quick. Am I within 3 minutes? What I got?
1.5.
Oh, this is no problem. In addition to the wrapping up of the large projects and some other challenges, business costs and whatnot, we have seen an inordinate shift in the land base and some of the legislation and policy with respect to operating on BC's land base. The first point to note, and many people in the province don't recognize this, is that more than 90% of all land in British Columbia is owned by the Crown. So the Crown has a huge role in BC's economy, and you don't have to look farther than the forest sector to realize that. They only harvest trees mostly off Crown-owned land based on tenures and leases. So in the last month or several months in BC, the province introduced a Land Act, which is arguably the most important amendments to the Land Act. And the Land Act is arguably the most important statute governing the use of public lands. It's where private sector interfaces with government and gets leases. It's the tourism sector and recreational sector, ski hills, use leased land mostly because of the high ownership of Crown land. But they introduced sweeping changes in this. It was going to include joint decision-making between First Nations and the minister, but there was a very, very significant public uprising and stakeholder backlash. So they pulled this legislation. The Mineral Tenure Act is currently being advanced or worked on, and this is going to result in pausing claim staking and mining activity in some traditional territories, and the government has passed the Haida Title Agreement, recognizing Aboriginal title on Haida Gwaii. Haida Gwaii is a unique situation, but the government is signaling they're going to take that same model and apply it elsewhere in British Columbia, and that could create some challenges. There's a lot of legal opinions just on the complexities and the difficulties with doing that. So all of this is sending a big chill through the investment community with respect to BC's land base. Then there's the province's Clean BC Roadmap to 2030. This is its investment, or it's its climate plan. It's planned to reduce climate emissions by 40% by 2030. Just so you know, we're up a little bit. The latest Canadian data said we're up 3% from our target. So now we have 43% to go instead of 40%. But the roadmap includes a carbon tax, which we all know about, and 24 other policy measures. And yes, you heard that right, 24 other policy measures. 4 of those policy measures are supposed to reduce carbon by a larger increment than the carbon tax. So it's a very comprehensive standards, caps, regulations, carbon taxes, supporting industry here, taking money from there. The result, though, the government has modeled this because they want to understand the impact on GHG emissions, and along with the GHG reductions that these 24 policies plus the carbon tax are going to get, is a halving in BC's growth rate over this decade. So it amounts to about in their modeling, it amounts to a reduction of $28.1 billion in 2030 in British Columbia compared to what we would have got if we didn't have the Clean BC policies. This slows economic growth in the province down tremendously, and it actually results in falling per capita income. Our per capita income is already under pressure as the projects are winding up, as I've shown. So this is not a plan that is going to help support prosperity as BC's prosperity comes under growing pressure and growing weight. This I've taken from the Excel spreadsheets that the government has put up on its website, just to give you a sense. It is the case that when they model these policies, every sector in BC's economy is smaller than it would be without the policies in 2030. Actually in 2025, 6, 7, 8 as well, but they're focused on 2030.
So Ken,
Yeah.
we do have to wrap up. But
Okay, that's good. I'm at the
are
end.
you saying, no, just hang on a sec. This line in front of the number is not good, right?
It's not, the line isn't good. That's smaller.
They seem to be in front of everything.
Yeah, so all parts, except for electricity, and that of course makes sense because it's a plan to electrify the economy, so we need more electric generation. But I will just say, and thank you for the nudge to wrap up, even the agriculture sector. When we're planning on shrinking the agriculture sector, that's the best plan we have to feed ourselves. And as far as I could tell, BC's agriculture exports are great, and we should continue to export as much as we can. Same story with mining, metals, the whole gamut. So this has got my attention. I'm doing a fair bit of work on it. It's a very, very significant challenge for BC's growth outlook.
Can you leave that one up for people to take a picture of?
Yeah, absolutely, I can. Is it one of the ones that didn't make the second half of the copy?
I don't know, but it's kind of important.
We're going to email this to you
Okay.
ASAP.
Sorry, Ken.
And I'm going to post it on BC's website. So yeah, there's the 28.1, but these are in billions, reductions in billions of dollars. There's our growth forecast. I'm not going to belabor it. I will leave you to look at the numbers. Important top line point though, 2024 is a soft year. You may be feeling it in your businesses. 2025, a bit of a rebound, but per capita income continues to fall in 2025 because population growth will grow more quickly than the economy. So it's not going to feel super prosperous, buoyant, a lot of activity going on, and especially until we get those private sector job growth numbers up. I do expect a slight increase this year, but so far there is little evidence that we are seeing the trend move from sideways to something more desirable in the upward direction. Housing starts are going to be down a little bit this year, most likely. It looks like that. Not paying too much attention to retail sales, because as far as I can tell, if you look at it on a per household basis, people are spending less. And there's the inflation number. It might be a little high at 3.7 for 2024. I probably have to adjust that down. I'm not going to run through the recap because I think you may have gotten the message. Do, though, in your brain think it's a little early for interest rate cuts, so don't start planning your world or life around interest rate cuts this summer. Will be a little bit longer. Also, really understand the massive expansion in the public sector. This is unprecedented. And the other thing that is a bit puzzling is amid this project boom, mega project boom, 3, 4, or 5 of them simultaneously being built, we are now in a world of structural deficits. So somehow or another, even though we came into this with a great deal of economic momentum, we have baked in the spending levels at too high of a level, and our fiscal challenges are quite significant. With that, I will wrap up. I know I've overstayed, so I don't even get questions, and I will scoot.
Thank you very much.